Trade rumors are continuing to intensify around the New York Rangers. As we know, Chris Drury is not done making moves, and one insider has linked the Rangers to multiple players around the league, and one of them may have Rangers fans fired up. We're going to break that down, as well as who I think could be making their way out of New York in this episode of Rangers Digest. But before we get into all of that, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 70% of you who watch these videos are not actually subscribed to the channel. So if you want to do yourself a favor, it's free. Hit that subscribe button and you get to stay up to date with everything New York Rangers. And that's right, of course, trade rumors are continuing to circle revolving around the New York Rangers, because we know Chris Drury, after moving out Jacob Trouba, he came out and said that he's not done yet. He just wants things to calm down a little bit. So there is a trade on the horizon for the New York Rangers, and it could be coming sooner than many people think. And let's get right into it. And this is from Larry Brooks, so take this with a grain of salt, but we're going to break it down. One player is, he went on to say, is Steven Stamkos. He went on to say, I'm asking if Steven Stamkos is unhappy in Nashville, which I'm sure he is. Nashville is the worst team in the league right now, and would he want to come to the New York Rangers? You talk about a guy who would come in and change the dynamic. He would. That's a guy who I would ask about. Now, while that is true, I'm not sure the Rangers have any interest in taking on $8 million for a guy who's already in his mid-30s after they just got rid of a guy who is entering his mid-30s that makes $8 million. So I'm not sure they would be entirely interested, but I think Larry Brooks is onto something. I think he may have the right team, and that is the Nashville Predators, the last place in the league, Nashville Predators. And they have some interesting players here on their forward group if we take a look now. And, you know, you're not moving Marchessault, makes too much, still has too many years left. That contract is, you know, it looked like it was going to be a steal, has been a bit of a disaster in general in Nashville this year. Stamkos moved back to center. He's a little bit easier to move. He's got the 4 years at $8 million. Again, I don't know if the Rangers have any interest in taking on another contract that's $8 million for a guy in his mid-30s at this point, but he could be a culture-changing piece if you were to acquire Steven Stamkos. And again, he's looked better the last couple of years when he was moved to the wing in Tampa. He started the year in Nashville on the wing. They have to have him playing center right now. They're just moving a lot around. But they have some interesting pieces. I also like Leroux over there on second line right wing, But I don't know if you're going to get away with a trade for Leroux if, you know, a guy like Capo Caco is not involved in the trade. And I don't know if the Rangers have any interest in making that trade specifically. But there's another guy, you know, like Colton Sissons, I think could really help the New York Rangers. But guys like that, when you're picking like that out of a team and a roster like this, I don't know if there's any real difference makers besides Steven Stamkos, which I don't think Nashville would be opposed to moving off of him at this point in time. But in looking at Steven Stamkos, and we're going to get to some other players and some other targets a little bit later in the video as well that might make a little bit more sense for the New York Rangers. But in terms of Steven Stamkos on the Rangers, I don't think that makes sense, and that dynamic and the way the team is built and the makeup of the team makes sense if Mika Zibanejad is still on the team. I think the dynamic and the makeup of the team, you would have to have Steven Stamkos playing center for the New York Rangers, and that just doesn't make sense to me if Mika Zibanejad is still on the team. Now, you could go to, a rookie GM and Barry Trotz and say, hey, could I offer you a slightly used Mika Zibanejad at this point, right? And maybe he says yes. I doubt that's the case because Zibanejad is signed forever at this point. That's a tough contract, and it's looking like a tough contract right now. But I think that's the only way that specific trade really makes sense for the New York Rangers. But when you look at their lineup, again, like I said, just the dynamic of the team. When you look at the wings, Cooley's not going anywhere. We're also going to have, we're going to touch on that too and what teams are asking for from the New York Rangers. Cooley's not going anywhere. Chris Kreider, potentially, again, I wouldn't trade him. I think, he's been here for so long, and I don't think he's the problem at all. Panarin is probably not going anywhere, although we'll touch on that as well. Lafreniere, you just signed. Riley Smith is a guy you can move out. Maybe you put Stamkos on the wing. Again, I just don't know if this trade makes sense with Steven Stamkos if Mika Zibanejad is still on the team, because you want to use that $8 million to go out and get a really big fish. And of course, Lafreniere's contract's going to kick in next year. Shesterkin's, raise is going to kick in next year. These are things you have to think about. We don't know what's going to happen with Keandre Miller. I would suspect at this point in time, because of his play so far this season, he's not going to get a significant raise. So these are certain things you have to start thinking about as well. And Arthur Staple, another insider, had an article on The Athletic where he was pinpointing a couple players that the Rangers could be interested as well. And one of them was Alex Tuch from the Buffalo Sabres. And I think this could make some sense as well. Makes far less than Steven Stamkos. He's in year 6 of 7 of that contract that he signed, so it is still tradable for the New York Rangers if they wanted to move off of that contract, if they were to trade for him. He is only 28 years of age, so he's still very young. At this cap hit, it could make sense for the Rangers to add him to the wing because, again, pretty cost effective for what he brings to the table, and he's having a decent season in Buffalo. He has 24 points in 29 games so far this season. More of a assist guy right now, more of a setup guy, playmaker, but he has had a history of scoring quite a few goals, so he can be a scorer. Plays a lot of minutes as well, so I wonder if you diminish his minutes a little bit, he might be more effective on a better team. So I think that's something to look at too. He also brings size and physicality. I think that's something that the Rangers should certainly look into. So this could be probably, definitely makes more sense. I think this could be a better option than Steven Stamkos. It's more cost effective. He's younger. I think he brings more to the table than Stamkos does at this point in his career. Although Stamkos, I think, he would bring a little bit of a culture change. He's won a Stanley Cup. He's won multiple Stanley Cups. He's been to multiple Stanley Cup finals. So I think that that's something that the Rangers could use, but Alex Tuch at this point in time looks like a better option for me. Now, from a Western Conference, this is from Arthur Staple in the same article from one Western Conference executive. Teams are not calling on Chris Drury or Mika Zibanejad. Teams want Will Cooley, Victor Mancini, and Gabe Perreault from the New York Rangers. I don't know if that's entirely true. I cannot see a world where a competing team or a competitive team or a team who wants to win the Stanley Cup wouldn't want to add Chris Kreider or Mika Zibanejad, or maybe just specifically Chris Kreider. Let me correct myself. So I don't see a world where that might be true. I do see, other teams wanting Will Cooley and Victor Mancini, but there is no world the Rangers are moving off those players at this point. So that makes no sense to me. One person, and I mentioned this off the top, that I could see making their way out of New York is Ryan Lindgren. Since he's come back from his season opening injury, he has not been good. The Rangers defense has not been good. This is a little chart here of Adam Fox with Lindgren versus without. Far better without Lindgren, which is crazy because to start the year and throughout the summer, I was saying that I believe, Ryan Lindgren should be re-signed because there was that whole thing going on during the summer, and that he was the Robin to Adam Fox's Batman. That is the furthest thing from the case at this point. And again, it's been a weird season so far, so I think one guy who could be making his way out, and credit to Chris Drury, he signed that contract with this in mind, that he may have to move off of him, so he gave himself that flexibility. So there is that as well, and I think that was a pretty smart move by Chris Drury there. And I think that he is one guy that could be making his way out of New York and definitely is in trade talks. And I think that the Ottawa Senators and the New York Rangers have had discussions, maybe not on Brady Tkachuk, but I think that they have had discussions, and that is revolving around Ryan Lindgren. Now, a lot of people like Capo Caco. There was a lot going on last year too, where some teams wanted Capo Caco. Chris Drury was not willing to let him go for a cheap price. He had a pretty significant price tag on him, and I think that's still the case this year. He's quietly had a pretty good year in a depth role. He's very good 5-on-5. He's playing responsible, I think. He's also using his body to his advantage, which is something that I think Rangers fans always really wanted from this player, and he's shown flashes. So I don't think this is a player you move off of yet. His contract is pretty good, considering what everyone thought was going to happen coming into the summer. So I'm not sure that's the player you move off of. But let me know in the comments what you think, who the Rangers should trade for, and some options around that, because again, I think Steven Stamkos could maybe reset the culture a little bit, but 4 more years at $8 million and he's already 34. It doesn't really make sense to me. Alex Tuch could make some sense. There's some other options we'll probably get to, throughout the week, because they don't play till Saturday again. So could get a little interesting here. I wonder if they pull the trigger on a trade before that game. And I do think that Ryan Lindgren is being shopped actively to other teams. So let me know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.